Hello, dear listeners. I'm just popping up for a moment to offer a brief content advisory. Our amazing guest offers wonderful stories, and one of them involves his own attempt at suicide. Please proceed with caution if this will be triggering to you, and take care of yourself. That's what's most important.
I chose this life to learn how to love. And at one point in my journey, I went, okay, I'm trans. I can't change that. This is who I am to my core. How do I love myself? There are many things around ADHD and autism that you can't just heal, but there are many aspects that you can. And understanding it was deeply meaningful to understand that ADHD can be a trauma pattern from childhood. And so it's through my own work, it's through taking 100% responsibility for those places I did not want to take responsibility. It's like, oh, that was my 5-year-old driving the bus, and he sure left a mess behind him. Right? So understanding that we create our own mess, and I didn't do it on purpose. Like, I wasn't that guy on purpose. And so, how can I just love that guy that is sometimes all messy? For me, it took plant medicine, going back to my roots, to really break open that part of understanding that, okay, this is the human that I have right now. Let's do this. And how can we do this with love and grace? Because I grew up in a world of shame and guilt. And in my journey, shame is a shortcut to change with long-term consequences, whereas love is a long road that ends in resilience. And so Jordan's going to take the long road because the short road led him to suicide, right? The shortcut put him in this place of not wanting to be here. So who do I want to be? Who am I really in this lifetime while I'm down here on Earth School? I think Earth School is a school of love. Like, how can we become love through and through?
This is the Gifts of Trauma podcast, stories of transformation and healing through compassion and inquiry.
Hello, Jordan Decker, and welcome to the Gifts of Trauma podcast from Compassionate Inquiry. Jordan, you know my name is Kevin Young, and I am so excited to have you along here when we were having a discussion about who in our community would we like to talk to. Bang, your name come up top of my list. I want to talk to Jordan Decker. And Jordan, I mean that seriously and genuinely. I'm honestly excited that you're here. And I've been thinking, why is that? Why do I have this desire to spend time with and talk to Jordan? And I was seriously asking myself that question. And I just find you very illuminating. I find you very genuine. I find you very honest. I think it's the statement namaste. I think
Mm.
the truth in me sees the truth in you and is very attracted to that. And I wanted to see if we could tease out your story a little bit for me personally, and hopefully our listeners get to understand how you are. I just want to hear lots about your story, the work that you do, how you arrived here in Compassionate Inquiry in this community. Would you be okay sharing a little bit about Jordan Decker with us?
Kevin, it's so great to be here. I'm really honored and a tiny bit embarrassed. Just there's a part of me that has this sense that who am I? I mean, who am I? Like, why is my story important? I think it's that journey of self-worth. I've heard so many other stories that have touched me from other people, and I'm really honored that you all think that my story might touch somebody. So thank you.
Jordan, I don't think it will. I'm pretty certain that it will. I'm pretty certain that when people will hear you, they will be inspired to do their own work and inspired to help other people do their work. That's what this is about. Would you be happy to take some time and introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, where in your life are you touching other people's lives? Tell us a little bit of the world that you operate in.
Thank you. It's important to me what we attach to the I am. And so, I am Jordan Decker, and I'm grace and gratitude and compassion and love. I am more than the letters behind my name, which aren't many. And with that, I do tap into my indigenous roots, understanding that, it's really colonizing behavior to need to have letters behind my name, and honoring my journey, my experience, the teachers and gurus that have been in my life as invisible letters behind my name. And with that, I call myself a polarity integration consultant. My neurospicy brain can see the opposite of everything. It's sometimes good, and sometimes that makes it a little bit of a struggle. I'm the creator of the Alchemy of Authenticity coaching. I am a plant medicine guide and an accidental activist for trans youth suicide prevention. In my spare time, I'm a cat whisperer and an animal lover. Recently, I did start honoring my ancestors and really diving into the Native American community, understanding that there's a greater number of suicides in the Native American community, and particularly around the LGBT community. And, when I learned that general suicide rates for youth is about 4%. When we look at the LGBT community, it's about 12%. When we look at just the transgender community, that skyrockets even more. And then in the indigenous community, it's 17% higher than that. And that just hurts my heart. It hurts my heart that people think that suicide is the only option, right? I've been there. It's my journey. I understand it. And so my passion is really helping people understand that they are loved and they are needed. Every story is unique. And if we don't tell our story, then that story is lost forever. And I really have this idea, this understanding that stories bring us together. Communities help us thrive, not just survive, but thrive. Yeah. So, the work that I do isn't something that's going to be, big and splashed all over the world. I enjoy meeting people where they are and showing them love exactly where they are. I've landed in San Francisco. There's a lot of homeless people here right now. And how can I show these people who have nothing just genuine love from my heart? So, I do a lot of work in youth suicide prevention, but really my work is just to love. My work is to love every person in front of me. And part of that love comes from my training in compassionate inquiry of, if somebody is behaving outside of what we would call normal adult behavior, regardless of their age, I just see that their 5-year-old is driving their emotional bus, and my compassion can just come out and go, oh, this isn't personal to me. They're not behaving personal to me in this way. Anyone in front of them, they would be behaving this way. So how can I just love them? And that comes from my own journey of not feeling or being very lovable in my past, and having compassion for my 5-year-old who drives the bus sometimes.
Can I pause you there? You're going somewhere that I really want to hear you talk about. I just want to acknowledge that when I sit here with people, when we work in compassionate inquiry, we have no agenda. When I sit here with people, I always have an agenda. If I'm truthful, I have a journey that I want to take this conversation on, and you have just totally blown that out of the water and landed me right in the deep water from the very beginning. And I can just feel I feel a whole host of emotions surging through my body right now. The joy of listening to you talk about I am love, and that is my work, that is my job, and the sadness and I suppose a little bit of guilt around my own privilege of listening to you talking about suicide rates within LGBTQ, trans, First Nations, and I wonder if we could just pause and honor that because yeah, you brought me right to the deep water very quickly, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, Jordan does that.
Yeah, you do. You do. To be honest, I think that's why feel myself attracted to you, wanting to spend time in your company and have these conversations with you because they're always true.
Mm.
There's no BS when I have conversations with you. Yeah, that was beautiful how you spoke there, Jordan. And you were going there, Jordan. I'm aware that to be in a place where you're stepping out into the world from a heart-centered place, that I am love and my job is to show compassion. My job is to just love the person that's in front of me. There are very, very, very few human beings that land on this earth in that state.
Mm.
Most of them, you talk about teachers and gurus, most of them learn how to be that, or at least are shown and guided into that state by an elder teacher or guru. How did you get there? How did you get to that state of being love, being compassion? And I see you chuckle and laugh there.
Uh, it's been a journey.
I guess it has.
It's, Jordan is a little neurospicy, and so sometimes he takes the long road. And it took him, you know, traveling down to South America to learn to come home and love himself. And so, we can only love others as much as we love ourselves, right? And so, many years ago, I found Gabor's book Scattered, and halfway through it, I looked around in my apartment and I'm like, does he have cameras in here? Has he been following my life? It would just, there were just so many things in that book. I'm like, oh, yes, Jordan does this and Jordan does that. And okay, here we go. And I studied that book for about a year. I just put it on my altar and I'm like, okay, so Gabor just gave me permission to heal and not be a diagnosis. And, there are many things around ADHD and autism that you can't just heal, but there are many aspects that you can. And understanding it was deeply meaningful to understand that ADHD can be a trauma pattern from childhood. And so it's through my own work, it's through taking 100% responsibility for those places I did not want to take responsibility. It's like, oh, that was my 5-year-old driving the bus and he sure left a mess behind him. Right? So understanding that we create our own mess, and I didn't do it on purpose. Like I wasn't that guy on purpose. And so how can I just love that guy that is sometimes all messy? For me, it took plant medicine, going back to my roots, to really break open that part of understanding that, okay, this is the human that I have right now. Let's do this. And how can we do this with love and grace? Because I grew up in a world of shame and guilt. And in my journey, shame is a shortcut to change with long-term consequences, whereas love is the long road that ends in resilience. And so Jordan's going to take the long road because the short road led him to suicide, right? The shortcut put him in this place of not wanting to be here, not feeling welcome.
Can I
Yeah.
can I pause you, Jordan? Would that be okay? Because every time you talk, it makes me want to ask more questions. A couple of things I just want to say that I'm noticing. Scattered Minds was the book that you were chatting about. First of all, is that right? Yeah, that was Gabor's first book. I think in 1999 that came out. Scattered Minds. And I noticed, Jordan, I'm just curious. You refer to yourself in the third person. And I don't know if you're doing that playfully or because of your spiritual teaching, in that you're identifying more with love, with presence, with consciousness than you are with, I heard you say, the body, the human that I have right now, which is a lovely saying. Is that intentional? Is it intentional to refer to yourself in the third person like that? Or why do you do that?
Yeah. So along my journey, I ran into this wonderful comedian turned inspirational speaker. His name is Kyle Cease. And we hear about, the Buddha and everybody talking about be the observer. Be the observer of who you are. And I could not put that in my, like, I just could not download that. I couldn't understand it. Be the observer. And Kyle Cease says, we have this meat puppet. And this meat puppet is like on a string with a marionette, right? So the marionette. But the I that I know myself to me, I'm not the puppet, nor am I the marionette. I am the observer of what's happening. And so when I can come into my higher self and I can see this puppeteer just making Jordan do all these crazy things, I can be like, hey, wait a second. We actually can change that. So part of separating the I am from Jordan, the human incantation that is understanding that I am greater than the behaviors that he does. And I am also responsible for helping him take responsibility and in creating change, in creating growth.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I assumed it was something to do with your spiritual teaching, and had short conversations about that before.
Well, and it comes from my work. I mean, I grew up, a lot of my wounding comes from a very conservative religion. And from that, when I'm currently writing a book called Unpacking Hell, and everything I did when I was a kid growing up, I was going to hell for. And so when I went to the book that was used to shame me, this book called the Bible says ashes to ashes and dust to dust. The body stays here, but the soul keeps going. And that really helped me understand that I am not my body. Like, I am not this physical form. I am the energy behind the physical form. So who do I want to be? Who am I really? Because I have a body that wants to do all kinds of crazy things and has. Right? But I feel like it's my vessel, my vehicle in this lifetime while I'm down here on Earth School. I think Earth School is a school of love. Like, how can we become love through and through?
Jordan, I'm very conscious because I can see that my mind wants to get engaged in this sort of conversation with you, which is because it's where I would love it. That's just my place of passion and interest and curiosity. And I just want to note very, very briefly, I've started reading a book this week called The Vital Spark, and its opening chapters are really helping me understand that I have sought spirituality, I have sought consciousness, I have sought love my whole life. And the book helped me understand that the places that I was being taught it from, the religions that I was being taught it from, I wasn't being taught the teachings. I was being taught the dogma, being taught the religion, not the teachings of the religion, which really helped me to get some clarity around why I have such a resistance to religion, because I wasn't learning, I wasn't being taught the teachings of Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or whoever it was. I was being taught the dogma.
Yeah.
And I have a real resistance to dogma. It just seems constrictive and restrictive, and everything was a sin. Everything I looked at or touched, was a sin. Everything I thought was a sin.
Yes.
Uh, and I couldn't get away from it quick enough. And I find myself circling right back around now to teachings of religions rather than the dogma of religions. And I kind of hear that a little bit in your story as well. You were touching there, Jordan, on an area. I have some questions here. We're a lot to do with what you do right now, but we've gone in a direction that I'd like to go with, if that's okay.
Sure.
And within compassionate inquiry, we talk a lot about childhood attunement. We talk about being seen. We talk about being heard, being loved for who we are without having to prove ourselves. Forgive me, please, for making assumptions, but I can only assume that for a trans person, a lot of that may have been missing. Being seen, being heard, being loved for who you are, being accepted. I can imagine a lot of that might have been missing. Certainly coming from a very conservative religious background, especially a lot of that might have been missing. Not only missing, but I'm assuming you might have got a lot of the opposite of being seen, being heard, being understood, being accepted. You talked to me then from your point of view about the relationship that the transgender people have with themselves because of a lot of these essential things being missing that we talk about in Compassionate Inquiry. How was your, or even the people you work with, how was your relationship with yourself when you were very young? And do you see that reflected in a lot of trans people? Is that normal, in inverted commas, to have that relationship with yourself?
I'm not sure that I can speak for anyone else. For me, I I think I came out of the oven knowing who I am. Like at 2 years old, my mother has a picture of me in the bathroom with this towel on my face because I cut myself shaving. Like I wasn't putting her lipstick on like my sister was. I was trying to be like dad. When I come out of the closet, I had dad's boots on, not mom's high heels. At 5, I had this little leather jacket you couldn't get me out of. And at 6 years old, I threw a fit. You're not gonna make me wear a dress. Like at 6 years old, I'm not wearing a dress. Dresses are for girls. And my family came from a line of corporal punishment. So, I got spanked. And at 6 years old was the first time I can remember. I didn't have language for it then, but it was the first time I can remember not wanting to be here anymore at 6,
My goodness.
right? And, parents think that they know what's best for their kids, but how does a 6-year-old without the language want to commit suicide? Right. So that's where I started. I was told that's not who you are. From an early age, I was told that's not who you are. And I can assume that many of us who are trans felt that at a very young age. There are many people who don't come to realize that they're trans until they're later in life. Like I didn't actually start transitioning medically until I was 38. Right? So if we go from 6 to 38, I had 32 years of not understanding why I'm in this world, of not understanding why I don't resonate with things. I was at 19, I came out as a lesbian. I knew at a very early age that I was attracted to women. And that's just a knowing. Like, it's hard to, like, imagine, Kevin, when you were 6, did you know who you were? Like, I am a boy and I am, this is my lot in life. I didn't fit the mold. And I'll say I chose. I have this belief that I chose my parents before I was born. So to set that stage a little, I chose this life to learn how to love. Right. And at one point in my journey, I went, okay, I'm trans. I can't change that. This is who I am to my core. How do I love myself?
Let me pause there, Jordan, because this is you've just made a very long journey in 5 minutes. So, and at 5 or 6, not having the language, and obviously not asking yourself the questions, how can I love myself? It seemed that there was a lot of stress, a lot of fear, suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts. How was that relationship with yourself in those years when you didn't? Because I can imagine being 8 years old and 10 years old and 12 years old and going to school and hanging out with other kids. And I can imagine that just all being very complicated. And, and all the girls are going to do this thing and you're recognizing, but I don't want to do that. I want to do this thing. And I can imagine there being a lot of rejection along the way. You're not coming with us, you're a girl. But yet you said, well, I'm not. And I can just imagine that being very complicated, very difficult, not being accepted, not being seen, not knowing how to behave, or where to fit in, or how to belong. And then you arrive at this place of, okay, I'm trans to my core. How do I love myself? That can't have been an easy transition, for want of a better word.
Yeah, you're right. And I have to say that I chose an amazing father. So when I was 6, I moved in with my dad. My parents separated when I was 2. I was 6 when I moved in with my dad. I'm sure my mom didn't know what to do with me. I was stuffing a sock in my pants. Like, I don't know where my penis went, but it's supposed to be here, so I'm going to put this here instead. Right? And my dad, a country boy from Texas, let's just set that setting, when I moved in with him, he took the table that was at the side of the couch and moved it by the front door. And he put a bowl on that little table. And he says to me, when we leave to go out the front door, you have to put your sock here. But as soon as we come back, you can pick it back up. Like, he was the epitome of love and just seeing me right where I am, right? I wore cowboy boots, I wore Wranglers, I had button-down shirts, I had a cowboy hat. And when we would go to his family's house in northern Texas, who were all preachers in this particular denomination, and, in their beliefs, girls don't wear pants, they don't wear makeup, they don't cut their hair, right? And they would look at my dad and they're like, why do you let that little girl wear, pants? And my dad is like, my child can wear anything they want. Like, he was my defender every step of the way. I am so grateful for him. He died when I was 24. And he never got to see the grown-up me. He never got to see that person in me who I knew I was. And yet, when I was 19, he had his first heart attack. And he went to the Social Security doctor to try to get on Social Security because he couldn't go to work. He needed to make money, so he was trying to do this. And the Social Security doctor said, you're probably going to die in the next 48 hours. But if you pay me $125 for the office visit, I can write you a prescription that'll save your life. And my dad didn't have $125. And so I wasn't in the appointment with him. I came to pick him up when I got off work. And I'm like, what did the doctor say? And the doctor said, I'm a 45-year-old white man and I'm expendable. And he says, I'm going to die in about 48 hours because I didn't have $125 for the prescription. And I was 18. I didn't have any money. I mean, And so he had congestive heart failure and basically his body was filling up with water. So we went over to the pharmacy and we bought 4 boxes of water pills. And I put 4 water pills down him every 4 hours. And in a matter of about 24 hours, I think he peed like 5 gallons of water off of himself. Like, we saved his life that night. And before we went to the pharmacy, while we were standing there, having this conversation, I'm like, what do we do, Dad? And he's like, well, he goes, it's all right, son. Let's just go over to the pharmacy and get some water pills. And I said, Dad, I'm not a boy. I said, I'm not your son. I'm a lesbian. He couldn't say the word. I said, I'm a lesbian. He goes, I think you're the best of both. Like, that's who I was to him, because I had this huge heart. Like, I've always had this huge heart, but I've always been this tough, rugged little boy. He lived for 4 years after that. And a couple years later, he had some cows on some land, and I was coming home from work. He had 2 other ranch hands there that were trying to help him. And I drive up, and I was a manager for fast food. So I had my little, white shirt and slacks on and nice shoes on. And he's like, come out here and help me with these cows. I'm like, Dad, let me change clothes real quick. He's, no, come on, come on, come on. And I'm like, okay. So I walk out there and he goes, you boys go sit on the fence. And in a matter of like 3 minutes, we had the cows where they needed to go, because he and I just had this understanding. We didn't have to do a lot of talking. We just had this understanding of how to work together. And I am so grateful for this man who I get to call my father for being that guy in my life. And in my darkest days, after he died, I went to the cow sale, and there was a cow that came through that I should have bought, and I didn't. I sat on my hands. And I felt somebody kick the bottom of my chair and say, why are you sitting on your hands? And I look around and there was not a person around me. And I was like, oh, okay, there you are. There you are. And I've always just been able to call on him when I really need help. He's just been that person in my life. And fast forwarding to this moment of realization, I had a handful of pills and a glass of water. And I was sitting in my apartment. It was midnight in California. And I have a handful of pills and a glass of water, and then my phone rings. And I look at the caller ID, and it's my sister. And so I put down my glass of water. My sister has 6 kids. I put down my glass of water and I pick up the phone. I'm like, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, are all your kids okay? And she's like, yeah. So my sister was in Oklahoma. So that meant it was 2 a.m. in Oklahoma. And I said, why are you calling me right now? Like, I'm getting ready to end my life. Why are you calling me right now? And she goes, I just needed to hear your voice. And so after we got off the phone, I refer that to that time period in my life as when I lost my religion to find my faith. Like, really, okay, you told me I'm going to hell for astrology. I'm going to look into astrology. You told me I'm going to hell for numerology. I'm going to look into numerology. You told me to go to hell, yeah, that I was going to hell because I didn't act, walk, dress, think like a girl. Okay, I'm going to explore this. Right. And so as I'm sitting there with a handful of pills and a glass of water, and I'm eyes raised to the heavens, if you don't help me understand this hell of a trans body I'm in, I'm coming to meet you. And then what I hear, just like somebody sitting next to me, when you're already in hell, there's no place to go. And then my phone rings. For me, that was a God moment. That was divine intervention. And that was when I really started going, okay, I'm not alone. I am here for a purpose. What is my purpose?
I'll let that land, Jordan. That's quite the story. It's beautiful. You're obviously very deeply divinely connected and grounded at the same time. That's a wonderful place to be. Jordan, can I ask another question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Just that story, because I want to just get it straight in my mind. Because a moment ago, when you talked about your father, you lit up how he was accepting and loving, and as we say in Compassion Inquiry, that empathetic, abiding presence in your life, steady, accepting, loving, normalizing, all of that. And as you spoke about him, I could see that your heart was singing, and I could feel that. And then that story took a 90-degree turn, and I was sitting with a handful of pills and a glass of water. So what pushed you to that? I'd love to hear a little bit more about difficulties of being you, and the relationship that you were having with the world right then, or having with yourself. And then I'd love to talk about change and possibilities. So how did you end up with a handful of pills and a glass of water?
Hmm. What a great question. Um, shame, shame, shame. Brene Brown says shame is I am a bad person, and guilt says I've done something bad. And my whole life, I just heard how bad of a person I was for who I am.
From who?
From family, from that, I'm going to call it religious abuse. I'll step into that. I tried really hard to be the girl that I was born, and I didn't know how to be her. I didn't know how to be her. Nothing about being a girl resonated with me. And so I was programmed to put everybody else first. I was programmed to not have a voice. I was programmed that I was less than. That programming got fed year after year, decade after decade, until I felt so unloved. Why am I even here? That thwarted belonging. Why am I even here? I've been a massage therapist since I was in my early 20s, and I became a trauma-informed massage therapist. I worked with a chiropractor for a while, and I'm not sure the details, but I can remember one day this chiropractor that I was working for, there was another massage therapist. His name was John, and everybody wanted to get in to see John. So one day I booked an appointment with John. I wanted to see who my competition was. And I'm not sure what happened in the middle of that appointment, but I left going, wow, John has some great skills. And so even after I left working for the chiropractor and was on my own, some of my clients, I would say, you know what? There's this guy, John, and he has some massage skills that I don't have. I can't know everything. And he has some knowledge that I don't have. And I think it'd really be good for this particular thing that you have going on if you went to see John. And my clients are like, I can't cheat on you. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm sending you to John because John can help you. I love you enough to send you to somebody else that can help you more than I can right here. I can take your money, but that's not what I'm about. I want to make sure that you're healing. And that right there, that shifted something in me to understanding that I'm a collaborator. Deep down, I'm a collaborator and not a competitor. And so that little seed was planted. And then going forward, there was still all of this history. There was still all of this programming that I had to deprogram myself, right? And it took that moment in my apartment with that handful of pills and glass of water to go, this is just my programming. I get to choose. And it took some divine intervention to bring me to that point.
What did you choose?
I chose life. I chose life. I chose to not believe that I was a purple monster or a green bush, as Gabor likes to say. You know, I've been using purple monster, and then when I heard Gabor's green bush, I'm like, oh, that works well too, right?
Okay, now, if you're somebody who is new to compassionate inquiry or have not gone through any of the trainings, this is going to need a little bit of explanation. The green bush example is a cherished and beloved analogy offered by Gabor, borrowed, I should say, but offered as a way to illustrate how we take on beliefs subconsciously. In fact, we take on beliefs that we really don't want to believe, and yet some part of us believes it. So Rosemary Davies Janes and myself are going to read an excerpt from the course. I will be Gabor, and Rosemary will be one of the practice clients. This little exercise is not original to me, okay? But I like it. So if I said to you, you're a green bush, what would you do with that?
I might ask you, what do you mean by a green bush?
I'd say, what? You don't know what a green bush is? You've never seen a green bush?
I've seen a green bush.
I'm saying you're a green bush. What would you do with that?
Okay, I'm going to take it as a metaphor, perhaps?
No, it's not a metaphor, no. I'm telling you, I'm not being metaphorical. I'm asserting that you're a green bush.
Oh, I see. So I could say, I'm not a green bush, right?
How would you feel about me saying that?
I have no problem with you saying that.
Okay, and what would you think of me in the process?
I might think you're a little bit nuts.
Right. Fair enough, okay. Because there is nothing in you that resonates with being a green bush.
This is true.
But it may be that I could say something. I don't know you personally, and maybe you are completely realized and complete and grounded in yourself, in which case there is nothing I could do to knock you out of that. But let's say you do have some insecurities, and I made some kind of comment that actually touched upon your insecurities. I'm going to use this as an example. What if I said, that's the stupidest question I ever heard? Now what would you do with that?
Okay, that might hurt my feelings a little bit more. It doesn't fit with my self-image.
But you see, it's no more true than you're a green bush.
Yes.
So why would that stupid assertion that this is the stupidest question I've ever heard mean more to you or make you upset, where me asserting that you're a green bush did not make you upset? So what you told me was that if I asserted that you were a green bush, you would clearly see that I was off my rocker.
Or that you were very artistic.
Yeah, something. But it would not evoke an emotional upset in you. On the other hand, if I said that that was the stupidest question and everything, you might feel upset.
Yes.
Okay, so just stay with that. So what I'm asking is, why would the one leave you untouched and the other cause hurt for you?
I think it would be because one would trigger nothing from my past, and the other one may trigger similar messages from the past.
Not from the past.
From the present and the past?
From the present. If it was only in the past, it wouldn't trigger anything.
Oh, I see, yes. If it was something that I was still hanging on to.
So I'm going to suggest something to you. The reason that the green bush doesn't stick at all, and you realize that I'm crazy, is because you know 100% that you're not a green bush. But the reason the other thing sticks is because you don't know that that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Part of you believes it. If you didn't believe it, it wouldn't hurt. It would just be the crazy statement of some nut job, right?
Right? But it's so hard. And we know this being in compassionate inquiry, it's so hard when somebody looks at you and calls you a purple monster. You're like, yeah, no. But when they say something that might be a little bit true, oh, you're this or you're that, you're selfish or you're angry or you're whatever. No, I am experiencing anger. I am not angry. I am experiencing anger. Going back to that, I am. I am not hungry. I'm experiencing hunger. It was understanding for the first time I have choice. And it's taken years to really implement that lesson, integrate that lesson, but not just to integrate it, to actually have it become part of me. Oh, wait a second. I have choice right now. You know, Sadhguru is very well known for saying, if you allow somebody else to cause you one emotion or you're giving them your power, right? So in working through my trauma, in understanding that I have been reactive my whole life, right? It's Eckhart Tolle that says when we're in our trauma, we're not response able. So I was reactive, right? And I was a 5-year-old at 30, at 38, until that moment where I realized I have a choice, and that seed was planted. And so I've been cultivating those seeds, understanding that, and this is a hard one, I am choosing to believe that other people think I'm less than. I'm doing that. How can I choose to believe who I am because of who I am? Thank you, Gabor. Thank you for helping me take 100% responsibility for every thought, feeling, and emotion I have, right? Because it takes me to where that started. I want to be in joy and love and light, and yet there is this dark side to me, right? So through working with plant medicine, I learned that I intentionally put my miner's hat on. And when I go into the darkness, the light always has my back. So I'm going to put my miner's hat on. I'm going to go into the darkness and I'm going to unpack whatever spirit shows me is the next layer of the onion. And, you know, I think Jordan came into this world with an onion that was about 10 pounds.
Let me ask you now, Jordan, then, because listening to your story and hearing the work that you've done on yourself and for yourself, with yourself, when I look at you right now, I also see a person who is doing great work with others. And maybe, maybe that work on self, when we do that and when we illuminate our own love and compassion and kindness, it naturally shines out into the world. That first relationship is with ourselves and bringing that into balance and focus. But I want to read you a little something just to get your thoughts on this. So Jordan has many dreams to work for the rights of transgender people. With this house in place and flourishing, they're talking about the Trans Heartline house that's there. Jordan was honoured at the Transgender Day of Remembrance on November 20th, 2020 for his tireless efforts as founder of the Trans Heartline and all his work in our community for transgender people. His dream following that event is to create projects and open doors for transgender people to receive the many services that they need. So talk to me about change. Talk to me about what needs to change. I know recently we had a conversation and you talked about just the difficulties of going to the doctor, going to the physician. And you told a beautiful story around that.
I am a trans man, and the world wants to diagnose me as mentally ill. I am not inherently mentally ill because I'm trans. But when you put society who says I'm going to hell, or that I'm an abomination, or anything that is not supportive, again, I couldn't see it as a green bush, right? Because I am rare. I am a rare human, right? Well, if we look at a teacup poodle or a giant sequoia, which are also rare, we revere those things. But with rare humans, we other them, right? In the indigenous community, folks like me were the medicine men and women. People who we diagnose as schizophrenia or because they hear or see things. Those people in my ancestry, we were the healers in the community because we had special gifts that not everybody else had. We sat in that Tao. We sat in that balance. And so going back to my roots, understanding that my gifts are special. My gift of understanding gender is not something that I need to frown upon. I can't control what other people think. I can choose what I think about me. And so this is that layer of onion of coming up of it's not my business what other people think about me, right? I've been in the middle of working on a course for medical community therapist, anybody who encounters a trans person to understand how to love and support that person right in front of them. And recently I had a pediatric trauma nurse come into my field and a registered nurse come into my field, both of which are helping me put this course together. If you're trans and you've had surgery and you go into an emergency room and you're unconscious, that can be a problem. You can't just put a catheter in me like you would somebody else. You could actually hurt me. And so I am called to make sure that every ER, every hospital, every doctor, every therapist understands the uniqueness of trans people and how something as small as a wrong name or pronoun can be a microaggression if it's on purpose. Right? How do we just love the human in front of us regardless of our judgments? Right? How do we it's hard. Polarity integration consultant, polarities, right? So what you don't know, Kevin, is right now I'm experiencing homelessness. I was at a retreat this last weekend called The Power of Love. I had plenty when I signed up. I had enough. I'm not going to say I had excess. I had enough. I was existing. I was surviving. I had enough. And I get to the retreat and I have $23 in my pocket and no place to stay when the retreat is over. So the polarity of that, I have gone from having abundance in my life where I was completely scheduled and rigid on my schedule. Like, and that's part of my neurospiciness. If the schedule changes last minute, I couldn't handle it. Like, it would just throw me off center. I was that guy. And now I'm experiencing homelessness and I'm experiencing financial instability. Like right now, as we're recording this podcast, my website is shut down. Like I don't have the money to turn it back on. And yet I know that I have to experience this because this is supposed to be in the course. This part of my learning is supposed to be inside of the course. I have gone from abundance to nothing. That's my polarity. I am learning the lessons of polarity on this particular topic in much of the same way I am learning the lessons of the polarity of gender. life for me is Earth School. What lesson am I learning today? And is there going to be a pop quiz that I'm going to pass or fail? For a long time, that driver that would cut me off in traffic, I failed that pop quiz, right? But it didn't matter who that driver cut off. It just happened to be me. Okay. I can take it personal and I can flip them the bird, or I can just be like, I've been you. I've been the guy cutting somebody else off in traffic because I thought I was more important and needed to get somewhere. Right? So taking 100% responsibility, right? Learning these lessons of polarity so that I can understand why I'm here. This had to happen. How do I know it had to happen? Because it is happening. It had to happen because it is happening, and it is my job to choose how I move through it. And ironically, this was called the Power of Love Retreat, and the power of love gathered around me, and I left with abundance. Right? I called 10 friends. I'm back in the Bay Area. I've been in this area for 25 years. I left. I've been gone for 3 or 4 years. And so I felt like I came with nobody. And I called 10 people. And while I was waiting on them to call back, I called the 11th person who was my spiritual advisor. And I said, trust me, you're receiving this call. And I've called 10 people before I called you. Because he doesn't like guests. He has a guest room, but he doesn't like guests. He likes his privacy. And I honored that. And I said, know that I wouldn't call if I didn't need it. And while I was at his house on Sunday, I had 10 phone calls returned from other people that I had called. And on Monday, I had a place to stay. And not only a place to stay, my friend that gave me a place to stay needs help with his mom. So all of a sudden, I have a caregiving job so that I can get myself righted financially, so that I can get this course out, so that my passion, my purpose for helping everybody just understand a trans person so they can see them in love and not in fear.
I don't know if there is another question, Jordan. I don't. Yeah, I'm really blessed, humbled in a beautiful way as I listen to your story, as I listen to you continuously show up with love, appreciation for every other human being, and the ability to do that even in the most difficult of times. What strikes me most of all right now, Jordan, is your ability to trust. I read like you, I read a lot of stuff, and I think in our work in compassionate inquiry, we can sometimes talk very conceptually. I am love. Yeah, that's a great concept. I don't know if you guys over there are familiar with the saying, when the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when the rubber hits the road, am I love? Or do I revert to the guy that flips the bird at the person pulling out in front of him in the car? And I know sometimes I like to think that I am love. And also in the moments of when my organism is being stressed or pressured, sometimes I'm the guy that flips the bird.
Exactly.
Can I tell you a brief story before I do ask you a final question?
Yes, please.
A very brief story that reflects what I'm talking about. I was delivering a sound bath to a group of people this week. At a few points in the sound bath, I made a mistake. The wood of my wooden mallet struck the crystal bowl. So rather than a really nice sound, you get a real clinky sound, you know. And I did that twice. And the second time, under my breath, I said to myself, oh, for F sake. I swore at myself. I was like, oh, and I swore at myself. And then I did it a third time. I made the same mistake a third time, and I just laughed. And I really had that landing of divinity to say, it's cool, relax. But afterwards, my friend who was closest to my sound bathing equipment, she said to me, did I hear you say, for F's sake, under your breath? I was like, yeah, you did. I was cross with myself. She was like, I was really surprised to hear you say that to yourself. Yeah, I was really surprised too. But just sometimes when the organism is pressurized, the I am love concept slips a little bit, and the anger arises. And I'm telling that story because I just want to impress on you how impressed I am, and I'm sure our listeners will be the same, at your ability to stay trusting even when times are difficult. Because that's when it matters. So thank you for that. Thank you for modeling that to me.
You know, in 2017, I asked for a divorce from my wife. And that was really when my meditation practice got very heavy. And what downloaded into me one night was, I've always been kept safe. And so that has been my mantra for years now. I've always been kept safe. Right? When I was out of the country, I've always been kept safe. There's a lot of my neurospiciness that requires me to have a manager. Jordan needs a manager, that's for sure. Just for life skills. Numbers get upside down and backwards, contracts, reading comprehension, not really my thing. And that's how I got into this position of financial lack. And homelessness is literally that part of me. I need a manager, but I didn't know, because I've always had money. So I could always just pay for whatever I lacked. Right? And last weekend, my mantra, I've always been kept safe. Right? I was leading the meditations for the group for the retreat, and I just kept trusting in the power of love. I just kept trusting in the power of love, and that I've always been kept safe. It's not been easy. It's not been easy. But instead of being a victim to life circumstances, I'm showing up as a student.
Jordan, and we started this conversation suggesting that it would loosely be based around the concepts of relationship, possibility, and change. Jordan, if anyone can embody and model relationship, possibility, and change, it's you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, brother.
And I want to ask you one final question, a little playful question that I ask a lot of my guests. I'm always really interested in their answer. My mind is already guessing your answer. So I'm going to have a little wager with myself as to whether I can guess your answer to this question. If you could teach the world one thing, what would that be?
Every single person in front of you is either giving love or asking for love. And if we can just see those 5-year-old behaviors as an adult standing in front of us asking for love, instead of taking personal what's coming out of their mouth, the world will be a different place.
Can I show you what I wrote down? I know our viewers can't see this on the page. That I don't know if you can see that, but there's
Beautiful.
That's what I guessed your answer was going to be. That was it. That was a beautiful answer. Yeah, just see the person in front of us. Jordan, thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us on the Gifts of Trauma podcast from Compassion Inquiry. I'm delighted you did so, and maybe in a while you'll come along and speak to us again.
I would love to, Kevin. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here today.
Please take good care of yourself, and we'll speak to you very soon. Jordan Decker, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Gifts of Trauma is a weekly podcast that features personal stories of trauma healing, transformation, and the gifts revealed on the path to authenticity. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personal therapy or a DIY formula for self-therapy. We'd like to thank you for being here today, and we'd also like to thank our guests, as well as Gabor Mate, Saturan Kaur, and the Compassionate Inquiry admin team, marketing team, and podcast team. Please join us again next week to hear more stories of transformation and healing through Compassionate Inquiry.